The afternoon sun of Aurelia Prime glowed through the transparent dome that covered the luxury district. Bright lights danced across the polished skywalks as thousands of shoppers moved between glittering storefronts. Holographic signs floated above each shop, displaying products worth more than an average worker could earn in a lifetime. In this district, every store had security drones at the doors, and every customer was expected to look like they belonged. Alara stepped off the Skytram, her boots making a soft sound against the metal path. She wore a simple cream-colored coat, a plain satchel over her shoulder, and her hair tied back neatly. She did not look like the usual kind of customer here. Her clothes were clean but not expensive. She had no glowing accessories, no crystal, jewelry, no designer robes. She walked with quiet confidence, but even she could feel the weight of the stares from the people around her. She had one goal today. There was a certain necklace she wanted to see. She had heard about it from a traveling trader who spoke of a piece so rare that it was displayed only on special request. It was said to be made from ether crystals, a gemstone mined from a dying star system, now considered extinct. Alara was curious. She was not sure she would buy it, but she wanted to hold it, to see if the stories about its beauty were true. The store she entered was one of the most prestigious in the galaxy. The glass doors slid open without a sound. Inside, the air was cooler and smelled faintly of polished stone. Light shimmered across display cases filled with bracelets, rings, and necklaces that sparkled like tiny suns. The staff wore matching silver uniforms with a blue insignia over their hearts. The moment Alara stepped in, she noticed the change in the atmosphere. Two clerks glanced at her, their expressions shifting to polite but distant smiles. The tall insectoid clerk behind the main counter straightened and tilted his head in her direction. His black eyes scanned her coat and satchel as if they were unworthy of the store's space. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice clicked slightly, the sound of his alien mandibles moving. "Yes, I was wondering if I could see the ether crystal necklace," Alara said politely. The clerk's eyes narrowed, and a faint vibration passed through his wings. "The ether crystal necklace is a high-value item. We only display it for serious customers. Are you certain you wish to see it?" Alara kept her smile steady. "Yes, I'm certain." The other clerk, a pale-skinned humanoid woman with silver hair, exchanged a glance with the insectoid. There was no attempt to hide the doubt in their faces. Behind Alara, two alien shoppers, a pair of tall, elegant reptilians, whispered to each other and chuckled softly. The insectoid clerk moved from behind the counter and approached her slowly, his long legs making him seem even more imposing. "Perhaps you might find something more in your range," he said, gesturing toward a smaller display case near the front where cheaper items sat. "These pieces are much more accessible." "I appreciate that," Alara replied, her voice calm. "But I would still like to see the necklace I asked for." His mandibles twitched in irritation. "Of course," he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. He turned to walk toward the back of the store, but instead of retrieving the necklace, he spoke quietly to the silver-haired woman. The woman's expression shifted into one of mild annoyance, and she disappeared into the storage room. Alara stood still, pretending not to notice the quiet murmurs from the other customers. She had been in situations like this before. Looked as if she did not belong, judged by appearance alone. She was used to it, but it still stung. A few moments later, the silver-haired clerk returned empty-handed. "I'm sorry," she said with a practiced smile, "but the ether crystal necklace is unavailable for viewing at this time." Alara's brows lifted slightly. "Unavailable? Is it not kept here?" "It is here," the insectoid said quickly, "but only available to certain clientele. You understand." The reptilian shoppers laughed quietly again. One of them muttered something in their own language, the meaning clear even without translation. The atmosphere in the store had shifted from cold politeness to open dismissal. Elara felt heat rise in her chest, but she refused to let her voice shake. "I see," she said softly. She turned as if to leave, her hand tightening slightly on the strap of her satchel. Just as she reached the door, she heard the insectoid clerk speak in a voice just loud enough for others to hear. "Some people wander into places far above their reach," he said to the silver-haired woman. "It is almost charming." A few customers chuckled. The sound echoed in Elara's ears. She paused at the threshold, her back still to them. Part of her wanted to walk away without a word. Another part of her, the part that had lived through far harsher trials than casual mockery, decided otherwise. She turned back slowly. "Thank you for your time," she said, her tone polite but firm. "I will not forget this visit." The insectoid smirked, clearly thinking she meant it as an empty threat. "Of course, miss. Have a pleasant day." Elara stepped outside into the warm light of Aurelia Prime's luxury district. She walked a few meters away from the store and stopped, beneath a tall holographic sign advertising a new line of luxury star cruisers. She reached into her satchel and took out a small, sleek communicator. With a quick swipe of her thumb, she opened a secure channel and sent a short message. The message contained only a few words, but it was enough to change everything that would happen next. You won't believe what just happened. Inside the store, the clerks returned to their business, certain the human woman was gone for good. They had no idea that the next customer to step through their door would bring more than credits. He would bring the truth. Inside the jewelry store, the quiet hum of climate control mixed with the soft shimmer of light reflecting off gemstones. The insectoid clerk, Vitharn, returned to the counter with a self-satisfied posture. He adjusted his silver uniform and checked the positioning of the display cases as if nothing had happened. A few customers drifted closer to the main counter. They were curious, not about the products, but about the small scene they had just witnessed. In the luxury district of Aurelia Prime, gossip was as valuable as any jewel. The silver-haired clerk leaned over to Vitharn. "You could have handled that with more subtlety," she whispered. Vitharn gave a low clicking sound that passed for a laugh among his kind. "Subtlety wastes time. People like her come in thinking they can just ask for our most valuable pieces. It is better to set them straight quickly." The reptilian shoppers who had mocked Elara earlier moved to the counter as if to reward Vitharn with their purchases. One of them, wearing a dark emerald cloak, spoke in a slow, deliberate voice. "You handled it well. Too many outsiders wander into these shops without understanding their place." The remark was not whispered. It was made to be heard. A few other customers smiled faintly, enjoying the shared moment of superiority. Elara, who had paused just outside the store, could still hear the voices through the open doors. She remained out of sight, her back pressed lightly against the cool wall of a neighboring shop. Her communicator was still in her hand. She had already sent the message. Now she waited. Back inside, Vitharn returned his attention to a display of smaller bracelets, polishing the glass with deliberate care. "Our true customers," he said to no one in particular, "do not need to ask twice. They know we respect wealth and status here. Those who have neither, they should be shopping at the street markets." The silver-haired clerk gave a polite laugh that did not reach her eyes. She glanced toward the door, almost uneasy, as if she sensed the moment was not quite finished. Two more shoppers entered, both wearing flowing robes embedded with tiny data crystals that pulsed faintly with color. They joined the growing circle of those who had heard parts of the exchange. Word was already moving through the store in quiet ripples about the human woman who dared to ask for the ether crystal necklace and was denied. Vitharn seemed to enjoy the attention. "You see," he told one of the newcomers, "we protect our treasures from casual hands. There is a reason our store's reputation is the highest on Aurelia Prime. Not everyone understands that." The customer nodded approvingly. "It is wise. You never know who might mishandle something so rare." In another corner of the store, a small group of younger alien patrons whispered to each other. One of them had recorded part of the exchange on a wrist device. They replayed. Vitharn's dismissive tone, laughing quietly as the recording repeated his words. Outside, Ilara stood in the bright light of the district. Her face was calm, but her eyes were focused. She was not angry in the way most people would expect. She had seen far worse treatment in far more dangerous places. This was just another moment to remember and to make sure was not forgotten by those who caused it. Her communicator blinked once. A reply had arrived. The message was short. On my way. 10 minutes. She slipped the device back into her satchel and stepped aside to watch the street. Luxury hovercars glided past in near silence. Shoppers moved. Between high-end boutiques, their voices a gentle hum under the glowing advertisements above. Inside the store, Vitharn continued his performance. He told another customer how the ether crystal necklace was kept in a private vault at the back, accessible only to those with the proper financial standing and verified credentials. His voice carried across the room, making sure everyone heard. The silver-haired clerk occasionally nodded, though she kept her eyes on the door. When a curious young alien asked about the necklace, Vitharn leaned forward and said, "Imagine the purest starlight, frozen into crystal form, each facet catching the glow of the universe itself. That is what the ether crystal looks like. Only the rarest clients can even look at it. Today, we had an unusual request from someone who could not possibly understand its value." The reptilian customers chuckled again. The moment was turning into a small social event, the kind that left a lasting impression in the district's rumor network. Ilara stepped back into the shadow of the building across the street. She did not want to be seen yet. Instead, she let the store's arrogance play out. Each laugh, each whispered comment, each careless insult was just adding weight to the truth that would soon arrive. She could already picture Kale's ship approaching. It would be impossible to miss. Sleek, dark, and carrying an authority that few dared to challenge, his personal craft was known throughout the central sectors. He did not often visit such places, but when he did, people remembered. Back inside, the customers were beginning to lose interest in the gossip. A few made their purchases and left, carrying their carefully wrapped treasures in bags marked with the store's insignia. The younger aliens with the recording device moved toward the door, ready to share their clip with friends in nearby cafes. Vitharn seemed satisfied that the interruption was over. "Another day protecting the store's honor," he said with a small click of amusement. But the silver-haired clerk's eyes suddenly widened. She had noticed movement outside. A shadow passed over the front windows as something large descended toward the street. The hum of engines grew louder, deeper, and more precise than any civilian craft. Customers turned to look. Outside, people on the skywalk slowed their steps. Heads tilted upward as the black and silver vessel came into view. Its surface gleamed. Under the artificial sunlight of the dome, and its landing thrusters released a faint shimmer of energy. The ship touched down with a soft vibration that could be felt through the street itself. The doors to the jewelry store slid open automatically, as if sensing the importance of what was about to happen. Vitharn straightened, smoothing the front of his uniform. "Now this," he said to the silver-haired clerk, "is the kind of arrival we expect." He had no idea that the arrival was not for him. The sleek black and silver vessel stood out in the middle of the luxury district's skywalk. Its landing struts touched the polished street with absolute precision. The ship's hull carried no company logo, no flashy paint, yet everyone knew. It was custom-made. It was the kind of craft that only the most powerful or influential people could own. The crowd outside the jewelry store grew quickly. Shoppers slowed their steps, whispering to each other as they tried to guess who was inside. A few even took out recording devices to capture the moment. Security drones from nearby shops drifted closer, scanning the vessel but keeping a safe distance. Inside the store, the silver-haired clerk's posture shifted from casual to alert. She kept glancing at the door, her fingers tapping lightly on the display counter. Vitharn noticed her distraction and clicked his mandibles in mild annoyance. "Do not lose focus," he told her quietly. "Important customers expect our full attention." She gave him a short nod, but did not stop watching the ship. Something about its design made her uneasy. It was too refined, too precise. Even the way it had landed was controlled in a way most civilian pilots could never match. The main hatch of the ship opened with a smooth hiss. A narrow ramp extended to the ground. The crowd shifted again as a tall human man stepped into view. He wore a dark coat that moved lightly with the air, and his boots were made of a material that gleamed faintly under the district's artificial sun. His hair was neatly kept, his jawline sharp, and his eyes carried a calm but undeniable authority. Kyle. Dern did not walk quickly. He moved with the steady pace of someone who knew the world would wait for him. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. A few recognized him immediately. Others only recognized the emblem pinned to his coat, a small silver insignia shaped like a starship's core, the mark of the Galactic Council's High Inventor. When he reached the doors of the jewelry store, they slid open without a sound. The atmosphere inside shifted instantly. Even those who did not know his name felt the weight of his presence. Tharn straightened, a confident smile forming on his face. In his mind, this was exactly the kind of guest the store existed to serve. "Welcome," he said, stepping forward. "It is an honor to have you here, sir. How may we—" Kale walked past him without slowing. His gaze was fixed on the back of the store where Elara stood waiting in the shadows near a display of silver bangles. Her calm face broke into a small smile when their eyes met. The silver-haired clerk's suspicion deepened. She glanced from Elara to Kale and back again, her mind piecing together a connection she did not want to believe. Kale reached Elara and took her hand gently. "Are you all right?" he asked in a voice that was quiet, yet carried through the store. "I'm fine," she replied. "I just wanted to see something, but it seems I wasn't the right kind of customer." Kale's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. He turned to face the clerks. The calm energy around him felt heavier now, like the air before a storm. Tharn's confident smile faltered slightly. "Is there a problem?" "Yes," Kyle said simply. He did not raise his voice, yet everyone heard him clearly. "My wife came here to see a particular piece. She was refused. She was also insulted in front of your other customers." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. The reptilian shoppers who had mocked Elara earlier lowered their gaze, suddenly interested in the floor tiles. The younger aliens who had recorded the earlier scene kept their devices hidden now. Tharn clicked his mandibles once in a nervous tick. "I assure you, sir, there must be some misunderstanding. We value all our customers, of course, but certain items require strict screening. We must protect our merchandise." Kyle stepped closer to the counter, his posture still calm but unyielding. "The item she asked for was the ether crystal necklace. You refused to show it to her. You suggested she look at cheaper items instead. Is that correct?" Vitharn's antennae twitched. "I may have suggested alternatives, yes. It is standard practice for—" Kale lifted a hand slightly and Vitharn stopped speaking. "Standard practice," Kale repeated. "Or prejudice. Do you judge customers by their clothing rather than their capability?" The silver-haired clerk shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. The air in the store felt thicker now. Even the hum of the cooling system seemed quieter. Kale turned his attention to the silver-haired clerk. "Go and bring the necklace. Now." She hesitated only a moment before hurrying toward the back of the store. The door to the private vault slid open for her, disappearing into a small corridor beyond. While she was gone, Kale faced Vitharn again. "Do you know who designed the first ether crystal necklace?" Vitharn tilted his head. "It is an ancient design. The maker's name has been lost to time, as far as I know. Cale's gaze was steady. It was made by a human artisan, centuries ago. My ancestor. The murmurs in the store grew louder. Even those who had been watching casually now leaned closer. Vitharn tried to recover his composure. That is interesting history, but I fail to see. The silver-haired clerk returned, carrying a case so polished it reflected the lights above. Inside the case rested the ether crystal necklace, glowing faintly with an inner light. Its facets caught the surrounding colors and scattered them into delicate patterns. Kyle took the case and opened it slowly, allowing the light to spill across the room. This necklace, he said, is a copy. My family holds the original rights and the proof of authenticity for every genuine piece. This store has been selling imitations for years. Gasps echoed around the room. The silver-haired clerk froze, her eyes wide. Vitharn's mandibles hung open for a moment before he spoke. That is impossible. Kyle raised a small device from his coat pocket and activated it. A holographic projection appeared above the counter, displaying the original artisan's seal, the unique crystal structure scans, and a full record of ownership dating back to the first necklace. The images matched nothing in the store's inventory records. You have been defrauding your customers, Kyle said. And today you chose to insult the wife of the man who can prove it. The room was silent. The reptilian shoppers stepped back from the counter. The younger aliens quickly stored their recording devices, realizing the situation had turned serious. Kyle closed the case and handed it to Alara. Hold this for me. She took it without a word, her expression calm, but her eyes bright. Kyle turned back to Vitharn, his voice still low but firm. You have 1 hour before the Galactic Trade Authority arrives. Use it to gather every piece of false merchandise you have. If you attempt to remove it from the premises, the consequences will be severe. Vitharn could only nod. Kale placed his hand lightly on Alara's back, guiding her toward the door. As they stepped outside, the crowd parted without a word. Ship's ramp lowered again. They walked up together, the case still in Alara's hands. Behind them, the jewelry store stood silent, its proud reputation crumbling under the weight of truth. The black and silver ship lifted from the ground just enough to shift its position. Instead of leaving, it hovered a short distance from the jewelry store. The crowd outside grew larger. News of Cale Dern's arrival was already spreading across Aurelia Prime's luxury district. People were sending live feeds to friends, tagging his name in public channels. In a place where image and status ruled, his presence was like a sudden storm. Inside the store, Vitharn moved quickly now. The arrogance he had shown earlier was gone, replaced by a tight, nervous precision. He and the silver-haired clerk began locking certain cases and sending coded instructions to the back rooms. They did not speak to each other much. Every action felt urgent. Outside, Kyle stood at the edge of the crowd with Alara beside him. She still held the case containing the ether crystal necklace. The artificial sunlight reflected off its surface, catching the attention of nearby onlookers. Some recognized it from old hollows of the legendary design. Others simply admired its beauty without knowing the full story. Kyle's voice carried clearly as he addressed the crowd. This piece, he said, gesturing to the case in Alara's hands, is not what it claims to be. This store has been selling imitations to unsuspecting buyers. My family holds the rights to the genuine design, and I have the records to prove it. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. People turned to each other, whispering urgently. Several shoppers, who had just left the store, stopped in their tracks, their purchases suddenly feeling heavier in their hands. Kyle continued, his tone steady. Fraud of this scale does not go unnoticed. The Galactic Trade Authority has been alerted. They will arrive shortly to investigate. If you have bought high-value jewelry from this shop in the past 5 years, I suggest you remain here to provide Your statements. From the far end of the street, the sound of approaching enforcement crafts could be heard. Their engines had a distinct, crisp hum that set them apart from civilian ships. The crowd shifted again, some stepping closer to witness. What would happen next? Others stepping back to avoid trouble. Ilara watched quietly, her gaze moving between the faces in the crowd. She saw the mixture of curiosity, outrage, and fear. A few of the reptilian customers from earlier now stood with arms crossed, avoiding her eyes. The younger aliens who had recorded her humiliation earlier seemed far less confident now. The first enforcement craft landed smoothly in front of the store. Its side doors opened, and 3 officers in deep blue uniforms stepped out. Their helmets carried the emblem of the Galactic Trade Authority, a silver scale balanced over a star. The lead officer, a tall humanoid with bronze-toned skin, scanned the area before approaching Kyle. "Hi, Inventor Dern," the officer said with a respectful nod. "We received your report. Are you prepared to give your statement?" "Yes," Kyle replied, handing over a data chip from his coat pocket. "This contains the original design scans, the crystal structure data, and proof of ownership records. It also includes a comparison with the items currently being sold inside that store." The officer took the chip, slotting it into a handheld reader. As the data began to display, the officer's expression grew more serious. "This is clear evidence of fraud on a large scale," he said. He signaled to the other officers who moved toward the store's entrance. Inside, Vitharn froze when the officers stepped in. The silver-haired clerk took a step back from the counter, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The lead officer's voice was calm but firm. "This establishment is under investigation for commercial fraud and unlawful sale of restricted designs. All inventory is to be locked and sealed immediately. Staff will be questioned on site." Vitharn began to protest, but the officer raised a hand. "Do not speak until you are questioned. Anything you say now will be recorded as part of the investigation." The enforcement team moved with methodical efficiency. Drones entered the store, scanning each display case and tagging suspicious items. Small holographic seals appeared over the glass, locking them from being opened. Customers still inside were instructed to step back from the counters. Outside, the crowd watched as the store's bright, welcoming image began to crumble. The once pristine glass now reflected a scene of official authority and exposed wrongdoing. Kale remained calm through it all, but Ilara noticed the way his hand stayed lightly on the case she carried. It was not just a piece of jewelry to him. It was a piece of history, a family legacy that someone had tried to exploit for profit. The bronze-skinned officer returned to Kale after several minutes. "We have confirmed your claims. All suspicious. Items are being confiscated for further analysis. The store will be closed until the investigation is complete. The owners will face heavy fines and possible criminal charges." Kale inclined his head. "Thank you, officer. I trust the trade authority will ensure restitution for those who have been deceived." "That will be part of the process," the officer assured him. The officers began escorting Vitharn and the silver-haired clerk to a separate vehicle for questioning. Vitharn's proud posture was gone. He kept his head lowered, his antennae drooping. The silver-haired clerk glanced once toward Ilara, her face pale and tense. When the crowd saw the clerks being taken away, the murmurs rose again. The earlier laughter and mockery were gone, replaced by the low, buzzing energy of a scandal breaking in real time. In the luxury district, nothing traveled faster than a story that could damage a rival's reputation. Ilara stepped closer to Kale. "You didn't have to stay here yourself," she said quietly. "You could have let the officers handle it." Kyle shook his head. "When someone tries to humiliate you, they are trying to humiliate me too. I will never let that pass unanswered." She smiled slightly, her grip on the case tightening. "Then, I suppose I should thank you for the rescue." He looked at her with a faint smile of his own. This wasn't a rescue. It was a correction. The enforcement team finished securing the store. A large seal bearing the Trade Authority emblem appeared above the entrance, marking it officially closed. People in the crowd began recording again, eager to share the image with their networks. Cale placed a hand on Alara's back, guiding her toward the waiting ship. As they walked up the ramp, the murmurs followed them, not with ridicule, but with awe. In just 1 hour, the story had changed completely. The ship's doors closed behind them, sealing out the noise of the street. Through the forward viewports, Alara could see the jewelry store growing smaller as the ship lifted. The bright lights of the district continued to shine, but for one shop, the glow had dimmed for a long time to come. Cale looked out at the city, below. "It is not enough to build great things," he said softly. "You must also protect them from those who would twist them for their own gain." Alara nodded, resting the case on her lap. "And sometimes protecting them means showing up in person." Kyle glanced at her with quiet pride. "Exactly." The ship glided smoothly above Aurelia Prime's skyline, weaving past tall crystal towers and hovering transit lanes. Alara sat in the passenger seat beside Kyle, the case containing the ether crystal necklace resting securely on her lap. The soft hum of the ship's engine filled the quiet between them. She turned her gaze toward him. "You said this design belonged to your family. I knew you had important work, but I didn't realize your name carried weight in things beyond. Starship engines." Cale kept his eyes on the flight path ahead. "My work with starships is my own achievement. The necklace is part of my family's heritage. Long before my time, before humans even had faster-than-light travel, my ancestors were artisans. They worked with rare materials from early trade routes, creating designs valued across the galaxy." He slowed the ship slightly as they passed over the Grand Central Plaza. Holographic billboards there were already changing to display breaking news, images of the jewelry store sealed by the Galactic Trade Authority, and Kyle himself standing in front of it. Alara tilted her head. "So this necklace, it is not just an old piece of jewelry, it is history." Cale nodded. "The original ether crystal necklace was crafted by Leora Dern, one of the first human artisans to trade with other species. She used crystal fragments, mined from a dying star, cut so perfectly that the light within them still glows centuries later. The design is so precise that even the best forgeries cannot match it without leaving tiny flaws. My family has always guarded the original patterns and the rights to produce them." Alara ran her fingers lightly over the smooth case. "And that store was selling copies as if they were real." "They were not just selling copies," Cale said, his voice firm. "They were erasing the truth. Every fake they sold was another step toward convincing the galaxy that our heritage was theirs to claim. People would start to believe the necklace had no human origin, that it was simply a product of some wealthy alien house. That cannot happen." They reached the upper level of a towering building near the center of the city. Kyle guided the ship toward a landing pad marked with a golden crest. As they landed, a small group of dignitaries and media representatives waited at the edge of the pad. The crowd parted when the ship's ramp extended. Alara followed Cale down the ramp, the case still in her hands. Bright recording lights flickered as reporters began speaking into their devices. Questions filled the air, but Cale raised his hand, slightly, and the noise softened. "I will answer your questions," he said, "but first I must share something with all of you." They moved into a large open hall that overlooked the city. Transparent walls stretched from floor to ceiling, giving a clear view of the glowing skyline. Inside, the media gathered in a semicircle around Kyle and Alara. Kyle gestured for Alara to place the case on a central table. She opened it slowly, revealing the necklace to the room. The light from the ether crystals filled the space with a soft, shifting glow. Conversations quieted as everyone stared. "This is the ether crystal necklace," Kale began. "It is not an alien creation. It is not the property of any corporate house. It was designed and crafted by a human over 400 years ago. My ancestor, Leora Dern, made this piece at a time when humans were still strangers to most of the galaxy. It was a gift to an alien diplomat who had helped our early trade efforts. That diplomat's descendants returned it to my family a century later, knowing its origin and value." A few reporters began recording closer shots of the necklace. Kyle let them, knowing the details mattered. "Today," Kyle continued, "a store in the luxury district was selling forgeries of this design. They claimed the copies were genuine, charging enormous sums to customers. The truth is simple. No one but my family has the rights to this work. Every forgery sold is an insult to human history and to the trust of honest buyers." The bronze-skinned officer from the trade authority entered the hall quietly, standing near the back. Kyle nodded to him before speaking again. "The Galactic Trade Authority is already handling the matter, but I wanted the public to hear this directly from me. The necklace is not simply valuable because of its materials. It is valuable because of what it represents. It is proof that humans have contributed beauty, skill, and artistry to the galaxy since the very beginning of our shared history." Alara watched the faces in the crowd. She saw curiosity turning into respect. Some of the alien reporters looked thoughtful, as if reevaluating their assumptions. Kale placed both hands on the table beside the necklace. "I will ensure that every person who bought one of these forgeries is compensated. I will also make the design's history available to the public so that no one can erase where it came from again." A reptilian reporter raised a scaled hand. "Will your family produce more necklaces in the future?" Kale's lips curved slightly. "Perhaps. But if we do, they will be crafted with the same care as the original, and they will be made only by those who carry the skill and knowledge of Leora Dern's work. They will not be mass-produced. Art should never be treated like a factory product." Another reporter, a tall insectoid, asked, "And the store's fate?" "That will be decided by the trade authority," Kale replied. "Their evidence is solid. The law will decide the rest." The questions continued for several minutes. When Kale finally stepped away from the reporters, Alara walked with him toward the edge of the hall. The city lights shimmered below them, each tower glowing in the warm, artificial sunlight of the dome. "You didn't have to tell the whole galaxy this story," she said softly. "You could have kept it quiet, handled it in private." Kyle looked out at the skyline. "If we keep our stories quiet, others will tell them for us, and when they do, they will change them. This way, the truth is in the open, where it belongs." Alara smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who's fought this kind of battle before." He gave a small nod. "I have, and I will again, if I must." As they turned to leave the hall, the necklace's glow still lit the table behind them. Cameras flashed one, last time before the media began dispersing. The story was already spreading through the planetary networks, a clear record of what had happened and why it mattered. For Alara, it was more than a public victory. It was a reminder that dignity was worth protecting, not just for individuals but for entire cultures, and she knew Kale would never stop protecting it. The room seemed frozen after Kyle's words. The crowd stood still and silent. Their eyes moved between Alara, who now stood taller with her chin slightly raised, and Kyle, whose calm but firm voice had revealed the truth. Moments ago, this was just a jewelry store, but now it felt like the center of the entire galaxy's attention. Thorn. The insectoid salesman twitched nervously. His wings shifted in quick jerks, as if he wanted to escape. The store manager stood near him with pale green skin, trembling. The data projection still hovered above them, showing the proof of the forgery. The necklace designs traced in glowing lines with human craftsmanship written in clear detail. Each mark showed the history and origin of the work. Kale took a step closer to the counter. His boots clicked on the polished floor. Every sound echoed in the silence. He spoke again in the same steady tone. "The Galactic Trade Authority has been informed. They will arrive shortly. This shop will answer for its actions." Some of the alien customers whispered among themselves. A tall-scaled alien who had laughed at Elara earlier now avoided her gaze. Another customer, a short, round creature with soft fur, looked genuinely shocked. They all realized they had been buying lies for years. Elara stood beside Kale. Her heart still raced from the sudden turn of events. She felt the warmth of his presence like a shield against the cold stares in the room. She remembered the moments just an hour ago when she had been pushed aside, spoken down to, and treated as if she was invisible. That pain was still there, but now it was joined by something stronger, a quiet pride in the truth that Kyle had revealed. The doors of the store slid open. A group of officials in dark silver uniforms entered. Their badges displayed the emblem of the Galactic Trade Authority. The lead officer, a tall woman with sharp eyes, scanned the room. Her gaze landed on Kyle. She nodded in recognition and then turned to the store manager. "We have received a priority report of fraudulent trade," she said in a clear voice. "Step aside and allow us to conduct a full investigation." The manager tried to speak, his voice shaking. "There must be some mistake. We are a respected store." The officer raised a hand. "We will determine that she signaled her team and they moved quickly." One examined the necklace in the display case. Another began scanning the inventory. A third officer started downloading the shop's transaction records from the wall terminal Tharn. Looked like he wanted to protest, but every word died before it reached his mouth. He knew the evidence was too strong. Kyle had come prepared. The proof was not only in the necklace, but also in the hidden data logs Kyle had uncovered during his investigation. Elara watched quietly. She did not feel the need to say anything. Every action spoke louder than words. The clerk who had first tried to block her from browsing now stood in the corner, his head lowered. His earlier confidence was gone. Replaced by fear of what the investigation might reveal, Kale stepped back to stand beside Elara. He lowered his voice so only she could hear. "This is not just about one store. There are many like it. They profit from false history, and they prey on those who do not know the truth. That is why I could not ignore it." Elara felt her chest tighten with emotion. She understood now that his arrival was not only to defend her pride, but also to protect something much larger: the legacy of human craft in the galaxy. Minutes later, the lead officer approached them. Her tone was official, but there was a trace of respect in her eyes. "We have confirmed the evidence. This establishment will be shut down until further notice. All counterfeit goods will be confiscated. The owners will face charges under galactic trade law." The announcement caused a stir among the customers. Some left quickly, not wanting to be involved. Others stayed watching the scene as if it was a public trial. The hum of scanners and quiet footsteps filled the store as the officials carried out their work. Kyle thanked the officer. She responded with a small nod. "Your report was precise and timely. It will prevent more damage in the trade network." She then turned to Elara. "You have my respect for standing here today." Few would face such open disrespect with such composure. Elara gave a small smile. She did not feel like a hero, but she was grateful for the words. Soon the officials left with the confiscated goods and sealed the entrance of the store. A bright yellow hollow barrier appeared across the door with the warning, "Under investigation, do not enter." The street outside was busy, but word of what happened had already started to spread. Shopkeepers and passers-by looked, toward Ilara and Kale with curiosity. Some recognized him immediately and bowed their heads in respect. Others whispered to each other in surprise. Kale turned to her and reached into the secure compartment of his coat. He pulled out a small velvet case and opened it. Inside lay a necklace. The design was similar to the one in the store, but this was no forgery. Its metal shone with a soft, natural glow, and the crystal at its center reflected the light like a tiny star. "This is the real one," Kale said softly. "It has been in my family for generations. I want you to wear it." Ilara's hands trembled slightly as he placed it around her neck. The crystal rested just above her heart, warm from his touch. She felt a strange mix of joy and responsibility. She was not only wearing a beautiful piece of history, she was carrying a story, a proof that truth could outshine lies as they walked away from the sealed store. Ilara noticed the change in the way people looked at her. The same street that had once felt unwelcoming now seemed open. She knew not everyone would change their views, but today she had seen how truth could shift even the strongest prejudice. Beside her, Kale walked with quiet confidence, his presence steady his gaze forward. She matched her steps with his, knowing that the path ahead would hold more challenges, but also more victories. Together, they had faced humiliation and turned it into justice. And now they carried the weight and honor of that victory into the next chapter of their lives. The city was alive with energy the day after the jewelry store was sealed. News channels buzzed with stories about the exposed fraud and the courageous stand of Ilara and Kale. The luxury district, once filled with whispers of mockery, now hummed with conversations about justice and truth. Ilara walked through the bustling streets beside Kale. The necklace she wore around her neck caught the light with every step. People glanced at it with respect, some nodding in acknowledgement as they recognized its significance. For the first time in a long time, Ilara felt proud, not just for herself but for the legacy the necklace carried. As they moved toward a nearby cafe, a group of children playing nearby paused to stare at the glowing crystal. One little girl, wide-eyed and curious, tugged at her mother's sleeve and asked in a soft voice, "Mom, who is she?" Her mother smiled gently. "That is Ilara. She helped show the truth to everyone." Ilara knelt to meet the child's eyes and gave a warm smile. "The truth is always important, no matter how small or big you are." Kyle watched her, admiration clear in his gaze. "You have grown stronger through all this. The courage you showed today inspires many." Ilara looked away for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. "It was not just me. Without you, I would still be standing alone outside that store." Kale shook his head. "We did this together, and together we will protect what matters." They entered the cafe, and the warmth inside felt welcoming. Friends and allies soon joined them, people who had heard of the story and wished to show their support. Among them were artisans, traders, and even a few officials from the Galactic Trade Authority. One of the officials, a stern yet kind-faced woman named Mira, raised her glass. "To truth and courage," she said, her voice steady. "To those who stand when others fall silent." The group echoed the toast, glasses clinking softly. Over the next weeks, the story continued to spread beyond Aurelia Prime. The Trade Authority launched a campaign to educate shoppers about counterfeit goods and to celebrate the real artisans, who created masterpieces like the Ether Crystal Necklace. Ilara was invited to speak at public forums where she shared her experience. She talked about dignity, respect, and the importance of standing up for oneself and one's heritage. Her words inspired many, turning her from a quiet customer into a respected figure across the galaxy. Kyle continued his work as a high inventor, but also focused on preserving and promoting the legacy of human artisanship. Together, he and Ilara established a foundation dedicated to protecting intellectual property and educating buyers about authenticity. One evening, as they walked along a quiet balcony overlooking the city's lights, Ilara looked at Kale and said, "I never imagined my life would change so much from one visit to a store." Kyle smiled, his eyes reflecting the glow of the distant stars. "Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest changes. You showed strength when it mattered most." She took a deep breath, feeling the calm after the storm. "I am ready for whatever comes next." Kale took her hand gently. "And I will be by your side, always." The city lights sparkled beneath them, a symbol of endless possibilities. Ilara felt hope and excitement for the future. Together, they had faced humiliation, uncovered lies, and restored honor. Now they looked forward to new adventures, knowing that truth and courage would guide their way.